You have all this potential inside, just waiting to be released. And it is a source of genuine impact and lasting fulfillment. It's what makes the difference between average and living empowered. But how do you discover? How do you recognize what God has uniquely placed inside? And there are multitudes of books, courses, and seminars that attempt to help people discover and define what drives them, what their purpose is, what makes them uniquely them. But man-made constructs can't replicate what God has designed and empowered. And so ultimately, either they wind up disappointed with no more clarity than they started with, or becomes a distraction. Something catches the attention that offers the illusion of effectiveness. It offers appeal, but it doesn't bring impact. And there's only one foolproof method to recognize what God has placed inside. And that's exactly why so few discover it. Because it runs absolutely counter to common sense. It requires us to die to self. The only absolute way to begin to discover, to recognize, and release what God has placed inside you is to begin to serve. It's that kingdom paradox. It's the idea that we think of dying to self as a bad thing. It sounds harsh and demanding. But in reality, once we break through and we recognize it is the source of all empowerment, you begin to realize how it will drive your life. It brings fulfillment. It brings elevation, promotion. More importantly, it brings impact into the world around you. It glorifies God. And it's just beginning to serve. And not just serving positionally, but intentionally. It's the understanding that when you're serving, when you're there for the benefit of whoever, whatever organization, whoever's there, when you recognize you're there for their benefit, that spirit rises to the surface. And it brings that supernatural impact that you couldn't replicate no matter how hard you tried. Because it's not about working harder. It's about applying yourself intentionally and allowing the Holy Spirit to bring that supernatural impact. And two aspects that you want to focus on is, one is, don't look for the perfect place to serve. What happens is we begin to limit ourselves. That when we begin to look at it from the sense of what will get me noticed or what seems to align, but rather, especially starting out, begin to serve anywhere, any way, even if it's hidden. Because when you're faithful with the little, when you're faithful with what belongs to another, God gives you your own and He brings promotion. Look at it every opportunity. In fact, as we'll see in the next episode, once you begin to understand applying yourself intentionally for the benefit, you'll begin to see how many opportunities there are in everyday life, every aspect of life, and they are not just, again, your impact. They're your avenues of promotion and elevation. But when you're serving, the other trap is don't get hung up on trying to recognize it yourself. Rarely do we see it in ourselves. But watch, when someone starts to come and say, do you realize how this impacts others? Other people will recognize the Holy Spirit in your life often before we even will. Just apply yourself intentionally, recognizing by faith, trusting by faith, that the Holy Spirit's at work and He's bringing His results. God's glorified and we get to be part of the process. And ultimately, we get to be blessed in the process. But also, as I said in the last episode, as you begin to recognize it, we only want that for confirmation and for confidence. Don't try to limit it by defining what your gifts are. Defining them actually brings limitation because, as we'll see in an upcoming episode, God is continually wanting to expand your impact, expand your influence, give you greater. But also, when we begin to define it, then we subconsciously begin to only focus on opportunities that seem to align with that. And we miss out on so much more. So beginning to recognize it is only confirmation and confidence that we would walk in that boldness of recognizing in any situation when we apply ourselves intentionally, the Holy Spirit, the gifting He's placed inside, will bring the result He's looking for. That's our faith walk, is understanding He's the one bringing the result when we just apply ourselves. So don't wait for clarity. Don't look for clarity. Create clarity. How? Right now, what are the opportunities to serve? What are the ways to humble yourself so that God can elevate, so that God can bring the promotion? Because again, when you're faithful in the small, when you're faithful with what belongs to another, God gives you your own.